Hello, and welcome to episode 57 of Talking Asperger with Andrew. My name's Andrew Marsh, and I have Asperger syndrome. I was diagnosed when I was 51, that's 7 years ago, after having had a successful career as a geologist in the construction industry. And I've always struggled fitting in with people, with work colleagues, with family. And part of that is because I have Asperger syndrome, and I now know and understand that. So I now work with employers to help people like me, or to help them help people like me get be better managed and better supported in the workplace. So I have a 7 steps program which I work with employers to go through on steps easy to adopt, strategies, coping mechanisms, and procedures put in place that an employer can put in place to make someone like me fit in, feel better, and work more productively, which is what your employer wants. So, in my weekly webinars, I covered a whole host of topics related to Asperger syndrome in the workplace, broadening it out to autism and neurodiversity generally. And I'm going to cover something today which is actually quite an important point, and I think people overlook this and then don't understand the significance of the reaction that they are getting from their neurodivergent stuff. Going to talk about consistency today, not how thick is your porridge, but consistency as in doing the same thing, instructing someone in the same way, giving them the same guidance and giving them the same instructions, and having them present what they're going to give back to you in the same orderly manner that you've agreed with them. Now, there are times when you are doing something that is completely different to what you did last time. But is it? Is it absolutely completely different? Or are they just a different topic, different theme? But you can present it in the same kind of way, same kind of visual aids, same kind of spreadsheet, the same kind of images, figures, visual aids to presentation. Now you're thinking, oh yes, well actually we do like to have the same sorts of ways of presenting what we've got. The content may be different, but the method of presenting it might be the same. So if you did that, you're being consistent. You've said to the person who has Asperger's or autism, we've got a new project coming up, and this is what I'd like you to do. I liked the way that you presented it with the visuals, the spreadsheet, the visual imagery, the photograph, or the annotated piece of information that you presented. I would like the same sort of information in this report, in this deliverable item that you're going to do for me. But obviously, the content is going to be different, and we need to work through that, understand what we need to do, what you need to do, how we're going to set up our communication channels, and so on. So, what you're doing is you are helping the person who has autism or Asperger's syndrome understand that whilst the content might be different, much of what they're doing is similar. And people on the spectrum love routine. We love routine. We love things being the same. We love knowing that what we did last week is what we're going to do this week, and we're going to be doing the same sort of thing next week. They love the repetition of similar tasks because they get familiar with it, they get confident at it, they get good at it, they're comfortable with it, they've understood the interdepartmental relationships and the inter-teammate relationships and what is going to come from their supervisor, their manager. And so they have a degree of certainty, a degree of comfort. And if there's one thing that people on the spectrum hate amongst most other things, it's change. I don't like change. I detest change for the sake of change. So if you can instruct someone to use the same sorts of visual aids, the same sorts of tables, the numbers are going to be different, the content's going to be different, but they're preparing the same sorts of things than they did last week, last month. That will give the person with autism, with Asperger syndrome, the comfort of knowing, yes, I'm happy. I know what I'm doing. I know what my boss is looking for. I know how to do this. I'm confident. I can relax. I can be calm, and I can go about doing my job effectively and efficiently. If you're a manager, that's what you want from your team. You want your teams to be able to function effectively and efficiently as individuals and as a team, delivering the product or service to your suppliers or your customers that you want to do. That's the aim of business. Deliver a good product, get paid for it, share the rewards down throughout the staff as well as the directors. That's the basic business model that we all understand. So part of that and this isn't just for those people who are neurodivergent. Being consistent helps everyone. Much of what I say with my strategies, my plans, my 7 steps program works for everyone. If it works, and by making it work for everyone, it makes the wheels that turn the business going, makes them run smoothly. It makes them well oiled. It makes them efficient. Makes all your teams and the individuals and your teams knowing what they're supposed to be doing. So consistency is the key. It absolutely is the key, because if you said to someone who has Asperger syndrome or autism, we've got a completely different project, don't know what the deliverables were going to be, don't want the visuals that you did last week, last month, we're going to come up with something new, something vibrant, something on point, we're going to, and then use various metaphors that lose me completely, but you know what I mean. You know the sorts of buzz language that people use. Lost on me. It's lost on people who are on the spectrum. Say what you mean what you say, keep it simple. So if you did that and you come up with all these new buzzwords, you wanted this, that, and the other, all you are going to do is confuse that person or that team. Your neurotypical team won't like it. Your neurodivergent people will struggle. They will go, what am I going to do? I don't know what you want me to do. This is new. This is different. How can I relate this to something I've done before to give me a thread that it's a little bit similar to what we did before, and I know how I did that, and I did that well. If you've upset the apple cart and you come out and the manager wants new and innovative and vibrant, those are great. It's good to be innovative. People on the spectrum are fantastically innovative if you support them properly. But don't just dump them something and say, well, it's completely different to what we've done before. If you do have the need to do that, set aside plenty of time to go through what you want. Not a 5 minutes, give them 20 sheets of paper and say, there you go, off you go. It's a bit different from last time. See you next week. That is not going to be effective and efficient. It won't be for neurotypical people. It certainly isn't for neurodivergent people. If you're going to do something that changes fundamentally what someone has done before, you as the manager have to take the time to sit down, prepare beforehand. Prepare a checklist, have a series of points, have maybe a table, have a visual image, have some bullet points, have summaries, and say, we're going to do this. It's different from what we did before, but we have done presentations similar to this, but just that the content's going to be different. Try and couch it in those terms so that the person on the spectrum, the person on the spectrum finds some familiarity in what you're doing, because otherwise they're going to bombard you with questions, and some of these managers pretend they don't have the time because they're very busy. If you don't set it out right at the start, you are doomed to failure with anyone, even more so with people who are neurodivergent. So if you're going to change what you did from what you did last week, last month, last year, it's incumbent on you as the manager to spend the time going through what you want, point by point. Get your checklist out, do all the things that we've talked about in some of the previous sessions here on Talking Asperger's with Andrew, and be prepared. Be prepared for questions. Be prepared for questions that you might not normally expect, because the person with Asperger's is thinking. You've given them something that's different. Their mind is racing at 1,000 miles an hour. They're thinking of this scenario, that scenario, that scenario, that scenario. Where, what happens, what happens, what happens, what happens. You might think I'm being a bit OTT about this, but actually I'm not. We will be thinking about what's going to happen. What do I do? How does it relate to what I did before? How can I do that? What do they wanted me to do? All of these questions are going through their head all of the time. So if you're coming up with major changes to what they've done before, you're going to confuse them, and they will be trying to find something to grab hold of to be a commonality to what they've done before. But if they can't, they're going to bombard you with questions, or they're just going to sit there and go, I can't cope with this. Not take anything in. They'll sit back. They'll try not to have a meltdown. And when you finish, they'll get up, they'll walk away, and they may then have a meltdown. They may go back to their desk, their work area, and start crying, get upset, get agitated, shout, swear. And you go, well, what's the matter with him? I've just spoken to them what I want them to do. You've got to be, I'm going to come back to 3 words that I keep coming back to when I'm doing these webinars. Be clear, be specific, be precise. If you can nail what you want someone to do in those 3 terms, be clear, be specific, be precise, then you have more chance that the person with autism or Asperger's is going to grasp what you want them to do. Allow time for questions. You have to allow time for questions when you're giving someone instructions. You absolutely do. Because otherwise, it's not going to work. There's a wonderful phrase in NLP, which is the outcome of communication is what you receive. Think about that for a minute. The outcome of communication is what you receive. So if you've given anyone, they can be neurotypical or neurodivergent, and a piece of work to do, and you haven't been clear, specific, and precise. You've said, oh, we've got this job in, there's a 20-page briefing document, just go on, off you go. 2 weeks time, you get it back. You go, what is this? This is not what I wanted. Actually, you didn't tell us what you wanted. You weren't clear. You weren't specific. You weren't precise. You gave us no clue about what you wanted us to do. You just threw something at us and expected us to make sense of this 20 pages of stuff. I need summaries. I need bullet points. I need tables. I need something visual that says this is a key point. This is a key point. This is a program. This is the time deliverable. You've got to complete this work, this part of the work within this week's this duration, and then there's another milestone 2 weeks later. If you've just given it 20 pages and it's all lost, all in the detail, we're not going to pick it up. We're not going to pick up what is important. What is important is that when you start, you're clear, specific, and precise. You make yourself open to questions, you have your regular check-in points, and you support your team. So often, in the wonderful world of the internet and social media that we now live in, where I can type a small short sentence into a search engine, and I can come up with a plethora of information about a topic. So if I was to put in bad managers giving instructions into your favorite search engine, you will get a plethora of responses, of posts where this person gave bad instructions, this happened, that went wrong, client wasn't happy, manager got reprimanded, employees got sacked. You can do it if you want to, and I would encourage you to do it from time to time. Just if you're thinking about something like that, say top 10 reasons why people leave their job. Google that. Read the answers. And you will sit there and you will think, what on earth is going on in the world? We have people who are managing people who have not got a clue how to manage. We need leaders in the 3rd decade of the 21st century, not micromanagers. So getting a bit off point, but it's not really, because you need to be consistent. You need to be consistent in managing your team in the way that supports them best so that they can work effectively. Not so that you can sit there clocking in when they come into work and how long they've had for their breaks and their toilet break and all. The manager's job is to support every employee in the way that works best for them so that they can be efficient doing the work you've ascribed them to do. That's your job. That's your manager's job. Is to be responsible for that, is to guide them, is to nurture them, is to support them so that that individual and those individuals that are in your team know what they're doing, comfortable that they understand what you've asked them to do, can approach you. You have to be approachable. Can approach you to say, I'm a bit stuck with this point. I've had to think about it for a little while and I'm not quite sure if I need to look at it in terms A or terms B or term C. Can we have a little chat just to guide me along the right road? Need to be available for those discussions because otherwise the person is going to make a decision and go for it. Right. I think this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it that way. A week later, the boss gets it back, goes, oh, I don't want that. That's not what I wanted. Well, I tried to talk to you about it, but you weren't available. So I had to make a decision. You've not liked what I've given you. What do we do about it? Because it's going to take 2 days to correct. That's not what you want to hear at 4 o'clock on a Friday when something has to be ready in an hour's time. So that is a management failure by not being clear, specific, and precise. Back to those 3 words again, so that the employee knows what they're doing. So that back to the NLP statement, the outcome of communication is what you receive. If you get back something you didn't expect, then you hadn't set out what you wanted to do clearly to the people that were doing the work. You have to set out what you're doing. And for people who are on the spectrum, consistency is the key. If they did some work for you last month and the deliverable, whatever it was, whether it's a report, whether it's a product, whether it's a service to a client or a customer, and you got good feedback from that client or customer, you relay that back to your team. Yep, client was really happy with what we did. The customers are champing at the bit to get more of this. They loved it. That's what you tell your team. You say, really pleased with what we did last month. We're getting great feedback from clients and customers. Let's do that again. Next time we get something coming in, that's what we want to do again. Tell your team. Tell them they did a good job. It gives them confidence. You're building a rapport with your team so that when something does, I won't say go wrong, but something does feel different or feel not quite right with the employee when he's doing the work, they have the confidence to be able to come to you and say, having a bit of trouble with this particular aspect of the work. Can we talk about this? Because that's good management. That's leading your team. That's giving them the opportunity to come and question you. They might have had some thoughts about it. They might think it's either A or B, and we'll go for that. And you have a conversation about it. It doesn't need to be long. When I was a geologist, we would have these conversations all the time with my colleagues. It can be a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation. Just looking at this in this way, is that are you comfortable with that? Yeah, that's fine. Or actually, make sure you've considered this point as well. Right, gotcha. And away you go. That's fine. If it's something more substantial, do back to the old Andrew Marsh technique number 1. Sit down with a cup of tea in a quiet space and go through it with them. Allow that moment to happen so that you can clarify what, if they're unsure, let them come to you and you can clarify what you need to do. Find a meeting room that's quiet without the hullabaloo of what's going on in the office. Get a cup of tea. Have that conversation, 10, 15 minutes. It will pay dividends because the employee with Asperger's or autism or anyone has said to you and has built the relationship up with you where they say, I need to talk to you about this. This is the crux point that I need to talk to you about to get direction. Got some ideas myself, but I just need the comfort of knowing that you want me to go down this direction or that direction. You're building the rapport with your teams. They're coming to you. They trust you. That's what you want. And that's where consistency, not only in what you've asked them to do, but consistency in how you approach them and how you allow them to interact with you throughout the life of the project. It's really important that you're consistent. So if you like things done by 3 o'clock on a Friday, don't turn around at 4 o'clock on the Thursday and say, actually, I want this for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, for Friday morning. You've suddenly upset the apple cart. If you're always wanting something for 3 o'clock on a Friday, unless you knew days beforehand that there was a reason, and there's a valid reason why you wanted at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, stick with your 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, because that's when your project teams, your individuals and your teams will be working towards getting the end result to you. So if you suddenly change when you want something by, and you don't tell them early enough so that they can account for that in their programming, you've got a problem. You need to be consistent. So consistency isn't just about the instructions, it's about your relationship with your teams, it's about how you go about communication with your teams, and these are really important things. So it all comes down to basic good management, and just about all of the things that I cover in my weekly webinars that you're watching now are good practice that should be employed throughout the business, throughout the teams that you're managing, um, and then everyone will work effectively and efficiently for the benefit of the business. But as I said earlier, if you Google top 10 reasons why someone was sacked or top 10 reasons why someone resigned on the spot, you will find bad managers in there. All of those things come down to bad management, poor communication, inconsistency of instructions, belligerent managers who are clock watching, all of those negative, unproductive, interfering, disruptive techniques that people who are insecure of their position project to their teams. I would encourage you every now and then, just have a look at something that takes your fancy. Top 10 reasons why I quit today, and then have a look and be aghast at what some people have to put up with at work from their managers and their supervisors. And you will sit there and think, I couldn't have stood that. I would have walked weeks ago. That's not acceptable behavior. So there is a lot we need to do. But to start by putting your own house in order. Get your teams to feel valued, be consistent in how you instruct them, encourage them to be innovative, support them in whatever way works best for them. And that might mean supporting those 6 people in the team one way, and those 2 people who have Asperger's or autism in a different way, but still having an 8-man team, an 8-person team that is united, efficient, working together to deliver the end result. But you might need to do it differently to different people in that team. It's the art of a good team leader, is to understand that and be flexible enough to work in that way so that you can get the best from all of your employees. There's no point getting the best from 6 of them if there's 2 that you're not getting the best from. Is there? You want the best from everyone. So you have to find the techniques, the methods of communicating, instructing, working with, managing, leading all of your team. And that means, if that means that it's different for different people, so be it. So be it. You know, it isn't difficult to get right, but it is so easy to get wrong. Managing teams, being responsible for teams, issuing work instructions, and getting the end result back. When I work with employers, I have, and I've already hinted on one of them, but I have 2 pieces of information that I share with them. The first one is that we are in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. We're not in the 1960s anymore. We're not in the 1970s or 1980s anymore. We're in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. It's about time we stepped up, recognized the wonderful opportunities and the amazing skills that everyone that works for us have in all of their glorious diversity, and do it better. Be better managers, be better leaders, and support them all. The other fact I mentioned is that people sometimes look back and think the 1980s was 10 or 20 years ago. It is December the 7th, so in 3 weeks' time, the 1980s would have started 43 years ago. Think about that for a moment. The 1980s started nearly 43 years ago. We have to do better than what we did in the 1980s. 1980s, just about when computers were starting to come in. I know when I was a geologist in the 1980s, didn't have computers. Did everything longhand, wrote all the reports out by hand. Isn't that amazing? I'm a dinosaur. I used to write reports by hand, do analysis by hand. That's how we did it back in those days. So talking about today is consistency. Be consistent in all that you do with your teams, because that will develop the relationship you have with them, so that you will know that with the neurodivergent person you've got in your team, you need to instruct them in that way, support them in that way, which might be different from the other 6 or 7 people you have in your team. They work together to deliver the end result for your team. So be consistent so that the person who has Asperger's or autism knows exactly what they're doing. Is there something in what they're doing they can relate to what they did before? If so, make a point of that, saying, do you know what, this is content's different, but those graphs that you did and that presentation that you prepared with those slides that we put into the report that we gave to the client, they really appreciated that. So we want something similar in what we're delivering in a month's time with this current project. You've immediately tuned your person, your team member with Asperger's or autism, into thinking, I have to deliver something similar to what I did before. The content of the information on it might be different, but the layout, the presentation format is similar to what we did before. I can work for that because I know how I did that. I know what I looked for to present that. I can map that across into this new project and do the work, knowing that I know what it's going to look like in terms of its visual impression when I finished. That's so important. So consistency is a really important part of managing teams or leading teams in the 21st century. And I would encourage you, if you're watching this on replay, to think about how consistent you are in how you lead your teams. Are you really consistent? Are you giving people all of the guidance that you need them to do the work right first time? Because it's an awful lot cheaper and an awful lot more efficient to get it right first time than it is to start chasing around a week after it should be finished because it's not right. That creates tension, it creates disharmony, it creates blame culture, whether that's within the team or whether that's between the team and the leader, the manager. All of these things can be avoided if you're clear, specific, precise, consistent, set out what you want, how you want it presented, so that everyone knows what they're doing, what they're aiming towards. And your chances are that you will get there better, easier, with less hassle if your team understands what you want them to do and there has a familiarity about what they're doing than what they have done before. Consistency. It's a tricky word, isn't it? It can catch us out. But I'm going to ask you to, next time you're sitting thinking, I've got a task I'm going to assign to some of my team, see if there's an element of consistency about what you have done before that you can incorporate into that, whether it's what you're presenting, whether they're going about it, what analysis they're doing, whatever it is, whatever it is. If you can find something that's consistent with what you've done before, you're helping your team, you're helping your neurodivergent people understand what you want them to do, which is a good starting point. Your second consistent point is how you relate to your team. Make sure you're approachable, have your regular check-in points, which is part of my STEM steps program. Be consistent that your first check-in point is usually 10 o'clock on day 2. How you getting on? Everything going okay? Just briefly summarize how you've got on and what your approach is, so that you can see that everything's going fine. Then your second check-in point will be Thursday afternoon of the first week, and so on. Whatever it is, whatever system you've set up, you're being consistent, you're making yourself approachable, and you are leading. That's what we need. So that is all I have time for today on consistency. Thank you very much for joining me. For those of you who are online, good to see you. Next week, I know what next week's topic is going to be, because it's that time of year again. I'm just going to briefly tell you what next week's topic is going to be. This is going to be the festive season and neurodiversity. I'm going to call it Asperger's in the festive season, because this time of year, so many people get stressed out with, particularly in the current climate we've got, where we're financially up against the wall. There's a lot of people in dire financial straits, and all of those pressures can become alarmingly overbearing for people on the spectrum. Because if you're having an office party or you have a secret Santa, they don't know what this thing is. They don't know how to behave. They don't know who to sit next to at the office party. Do they sit next to the boss? Do they sit next to one of their team members? Do they know what to say? Is everyone dressing up? What does they dress up? All of those things add to the already stressful situation of a work environment, which can be very stressful for someone who's neurodivergent, as well as many other people. So next week, I'm going to talk about Asperger's and the festive season, some tips and handy techniques and very simple things that you can do that can help your neurodiverse employees just be a little calmer, just be not as stressed, and try and help them get through this trying time without them having a meltdown, having to be off work because they're too stressed and they can't cope, because that then puts pressure on them because they're not working, puts pressure on the rest of your team because they're a person down or 2 people down. So if you can create an environment where someone who has Asperger's or autism in the workplace, getting towards Christmas, the festive season, Yule, see what you can do to help them, ease them through as gently as you can. So that's what next week's topic is going to be, Asperger's and the festive season. So I will see you next week. Thank you all for your time. And if you do have any questions or want to get in touch with me, you can get me on aspergersmatters.com, or you can email me at andrew@aspergersmatters.com, and I'll welcome the opportunity to see how I can help you in any way. So that's me, Andrew Marsh, the Resilient Asperger. Hope to see you next week. Take care and goodbye.